Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2895 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. The title for today's Wisdom Trek is Shivering in the Omnipresence, No Hiding Places in Cosmic Geography. In our previous expedition along this ancient sacred trail, we stepped into the breathtaking opening movement of Psalm 139, verses 1 through 6. We explored the terrifying yet deeply comforting reality of God's absolute omniscience. We learned that the Creator has meticulously mined the deepest shafts of our hearts, intimately tracking our sitting down and our standing up. We marveled at how He has hemmed us in, constructing a protective, supernatural perimeter around our vulnerabilities and resting His hand of covenant blessing firmly upon our heads. We experienced a beautiful sense of spiritual vertigo, realizing that the infinite intelligence of our King completely surpasses our human comprehension. Today, my friends, we take our next deliberate, awe-inspiring steps up the mountain pass. We are continuing our exploration of this magnificent psalm, focusing our attention on Psalm 139, verses 7 through 12 in the New Living Translation. If the first 6 verses establish that God knows everything about us, this next stanza reveals why that is a cosmic necessity. We are moving from the infinite depth of the divine mind to the infinite width of the divine presence. David is going to take us on a rapid, macro-cosmic tour across the vertical and horizontal axes of reality, demonstrating that there is absolutely no hiding place in all of cosmic geography. Let us step onto the trail and discover the beautiful impossibility of escaping the sovereign King. The first segment is the vertical axis, piercing the realms of heaven and Sheol. Let us listen to the opening lines of this cosmic pursuit as recorded in verse 7 and verse 8. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. In these grouped, contiguous thoughts, David confronts a reality that completely upends the ancient world's understanding of space and spiritual authority. He cries out, I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. To fully grasp the radical, polemical nature of verse 7 and verse 8, we must view them through the brilliant lens of the ancient Israelite divine council worldview. In the ancient Near East, the surrounding pagan nations operated under a strict system of cosmic geography. They believed that the spiritual realm was deeply fragmented, carved up into competitive, localized jurisdictions controlled by different territorial Elohim, the rebel sons of God who were assigned to the nations after the Tower of Babel. If you were in Egypt, you were under the eye of Ra and Osiris. If you crossed over into Canaan, you were in the domain of Baal and Asherah. Furthermore, these gods were vertically limited. Baal was the lord of the high skies, but he had no power in the underworld. Mot was the terrifying king of the grave, ruling the domain of death where the living gods could not interfere. The pagan world assumed that if you traveled far enough, or if you descended into the darkness of death, you could successfully escape the gaze of a specific national deity. But David stands as a theological revolutionary, and he completely demolishes this fragmented pagan worldview. He looks at the vertical axis of the cosmos and declares, if I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. Think about the absolute totality of this claim. Heaven, the Shemayim, represented the supreme, radiant assembly room of the divine council, the very zenith of cosmic light and order. If David climbs to the highest spiritual heights, Yahweh is effortlessly enthroned there, presiding over the loyal heavenly host. But then David flips the map completely, looking into the pitch-black abyss of the grave or Sheol, the underworld. In pagan thought, Sheol was a garbage dump of forgotten souls, a territory completely isolated from the gods of life. Yet David declares that if he makes his bed in the deep recesses of the underworld, he will open his eyes and find Yahweh standing right there next to him. There is no independent dark zone and no demonic underworld that can construct a legal barrier to lock the Creator out. Yahweh's jurisdiction is absolute, unmediated, and completely seamless from the highest celestial throne to the deepest subterranean tomb. The rebel principalities of death have no private closets where they can hide from the King of Glory. The second segment is the horizontal axis overruling the farthest horizons. Having mapped the vertical dimensions of reality, the psalmist turns his attention to the horizontal limits of the earth, combining his logical thoughts in verse 9 and verse 10. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. David paints a breathtaking, cinematic visual of rapid, long-distance transit across the globe. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. In the poetic vocabulary of ancient Israel, the wings of the morning referred to the first blinding rays of the dawning sun, leaping up over the eastern horizon at the speed of light. Conversely, the farthest oceans referred to the western horizon, the deep, unpredictable, and highly dangerous waters of the Mediterranean Sea and whatever lay beyond. David is mapping out an extreme east-to-west trajectory. He is saying, what if I could capture a sunbeam in the east, fly across the entire planet in a fraction of a second, and drop myself down into the most remote, uncharted wilderness of the Western Sea? In the ancient mind, traveling to the farthest oceans meant crossing the boundary lines into disinherited pagan lands, crossing into territories heavily fortified by the rebel spirits of the nations. It was the ultimate frontier of chaos. In Canaanite mythology, the deep sea was the personal playground of Yam, the god of primordial chaos and liquid destruction. A traveler who ventured into the far oceans expected to find themselves completely abandoned, left to the cruel whims of foreign elements and hostile deities. But notice the beautiful, protective reality that intercepts David in verse 10. Even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. The phrase, even there, is a thunderous declaration of cosmic ownership. There are no blank spots on Yahweh's map. There are no international waters where his sovereignty doesn't apply. You can travel to the most distant, unchurched, and spiritually dark coordinate on the globe, and you will not find an empty space. Instead, you will find that the personal loving hand of your Creator has already beaten you there. He doesn't just watch you from a celestial distance. His hand is actively present to guide your steps, and his raw, warrior strength is right beside you to support your weariness. The rebel principalities have no exclusive legal zones where they can isolate a child of God from the perimeter defense of the Almighty. The horizontal limits of the earth are merely a carpet unrolled beneath the feet of the King. The third segment is the spiritual shroud, dismantling the canopy of darkness. The narrative moves from the physical limitations of space to the psychological and spiritual attempt to find a hiding place under the shroud of darkness. The psalmist groups these contiguous thoughts in verse 11 and verse 12. I could ask the darkness to hide me and the light around me to become night, but even in darkness I cannot hide from you. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. David explores a deeply human and highly desperate temptation. I could ask the darkness to hide me and the light around me to become night, but even in darkness I cannot hide from you. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. Throughout history, human beings have attempted to use the darkness as a moral and spiritual hideout. When we are consumed by shame, when we fail the covenant, or when we want to execute our hidden, compromised strategies, we naturally seek the shadows. We assume that if we can obscure our actions from the eyes of our fellow humans, we can somehow obscure them from the eyes of heaven. Furthermore, the pagan world viewed darkness as the supreme element of the rebel principalities. They believed that the night was the specific hour where the evil spirits executed their unchecked malice, a shroud that blinded the forces of order. But David notes the absolute, staggering transparency of reality to the Creator in verse 12. He declares that the darkness is completely useless as a blindfold for the Almighty. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. This is an absolute masterpiece of cosmic reality. To a human eye, light and darkness are structural opposites. Darkness is the absence of light, a physical limitation that paralyzes our vision. But to the infinite, uncreated perception of Yahweh, light and darkness are completely symmetrical. The night doesn't obstruct his sight. It literally glows with the same radiant clarity as the noonday sun. He sees through the thickest physical shadows, and he pierces the darkest spiritual shrouds of our deception. You cannot use the cover of night to execute a secret rebellion, because the king walks through the dark with unhindered, perfect vision. The domain of the enemy is entirely illuminated by the presence of the Most High. The fourth segment is Descending the Trail in Perfect Security. Psalm 139, verses 7 through 12, provides us with a magnificent, unyielding shield of truth to protect our minds against the crushing weight of loneliness and fear. It teaches us that our God is a non-negotiable, permanent presence in our lives. There is no failure deep enough, no distance far enough, and no darkness thick enough to separate us from the loyal covenant love of our King. As you walk your trek today, let the radical omnipresence of your Creator completely drive out your anxieties. If you are currently walking through a dark, painful season of life, feeling as though you have descended into the very grave of your expectations, or the underworld of your grief, remember the horizontal and vertical map of David. You are not abandoned. Your King is standing right there in the dark next to you. If you feel isolated, as though your life has been cast out into the farthest, most chaotic oceans of a hostile culture, look down at your path. The hand of the Maker of heaven and earth is actively guiding you, and his warrior strength is holding you up. Stop trying to construct artificial hiding places out of your shame or your secrecy. Step out of the shadows of your deception and allow the light of his gaze to wash over your soul. The darkness is not your enemy, and it is not a barrier to your Father. Trust in his absolute, seamless jurisdiction over every dimension of reality, and walk forward into the world with the bold, resilient, and joyful stride of a soul that can never, ever be lost from the presence of the King. If you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review, then encourage your friends and family to join us, and come along tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, Creating a Legacy. As we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. Join me next time for more daily wisdom.